In this video, we're going to be talking about Java variables. Now, a variable is something that is exactly like what it sounds. It is something that can vary. It is a value which can be assigned and also changed. For example, a count might start at 0 and then be incremented each time some type of event happens. Variable declaration is how you say what the type of the variable is and its identifier. For example, you might have some type and a variable name of my variable name, so that some type can be any valid Java type. And then variable assignment is how you assign a value to the declared variable. And you can see in the example, to my variable name, I'm assigning the value of 123. The first time a value is assigned to a variable, it is called initializing a variable. A very common practice is to define the variable and initialize it in a single statement. Now, values can be assigned to variables a number of different ways. It can be assigned explicitly by a value. It can be assigned by an expression. It can be assigned from another variable itself, or it can also be assigned from the value returned by a method. Now, variables can be defined within methods or at the class level. Within the method, it is called method level scope. However, if it's defined in the class level, this is called member level scope. And this is one of those favorite interviewer questions too. Now, variables can be used with the keyword final to prevent that variable from changing after it is initialized. This is a very important feature of Java. Now, Java also does not have a formal construct for defining constants as some languages do. However, we can achieve the same effect by using the modifier static and final that effectively will give us a constant, and a lot of people will call this a constant even though Java does not have a formal construct for defining constants. Now let's jump over to IntelliJ and take a look at variable examples. All right, in this video, we are going to go through and do some examples of Java variables. So you can see that I have the previous example from Hello World there up on the screen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here, create a new class, and we'll call this Java variables. And we're going to do the same thing that we did previously. So now we're declaring that as Java variables. I'm going to show you a shortcut. So we can do PSVM for the main method declaration. So I'm just going to hit enter here, and you can see that IntelliJ created the main method for us. So now to declare a variable, I'm going to do the type of int, which is an integer, which is a whole number it's a number without any decimal places. And I'm going to call this toLine. And I just terminate it with a semicolon, so that's the line end there. And this has now created that variable. So I've declared the variable toLine. Now in the second line, I'm going to say toLine equals 2, like so. And that is the assignment and also the initialization of the toLine variable. And if I want to do another shortcut, I can do sout for system out and just hit enter. And now I get that output call, and I can say toLine, like so. Now if I run this, we can see the output in the bottom window there is now 2. So that is a toLine variable declaration. Now we can do this all in one line. So I'm going to do int again. That is the variable type. We'll call one line, and we'll say that equals 1. And again, we need the semicolon. So if I change our output to one line, like so, we will be able to see the output. Now we can see that output has changed to 1. Let me resize this a little bit. Now we can also do int, and I'm going to say don't do this, equals 1, comma. Now this example here, I'm showing you that you declare and initialize multiple variables on one line, separated by a colon. But people really don't like doing this, and I don't prefer this. And if you're working with other developers on a project, they're probably not going to like that either, because what happens here, people consider this not very readable. So I wanted to make you aware that you could do it, but generally other developers, if they're looking at your code, are not going to like that because this is not considered very readable. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Now I do want to show you that you can reassign variables. So on line 5 there, the one line variable, I've assigned that to a value of 1. And I can say here, one line equals 6, and hit a semicolon there. And now if I hit compile or run, I'm sorry, we can see that the one line output is now 6. And I can also say that one line equals 2 lines. So here I am reassigning one line to the value of the 2 line variable. So now if I output that, we will see that the output of the window is now 2. So the one line variable equaled 2 when we got down to that system out print line statement. Now I can also say int from expression equals 2 plus 3, and get rid of that space there. And now I can change this to from expression. And when I run this in the bottom window, we can see that I'll get the output of 5 because 2 plus 3 equals 5. Now another thing I can try to do, if I do final, the keyword final, and I'll call this final var equals, and we'll call this 10. Now I can output that. And when I run this, I'll get the output of 10. But if I want to come up here and say that is now equal to 12, we can see here that I'm getting a squiggly. And even if I do try to run this, you can see in the bottom, down on the bottom window here, I'm getting an error. So this is a compiler error saying, hey, you can't reassign that. So this is how that final keyword works. So if I try to change the value of that once it's been initialized, I can't do that. The compiler is not going to let me do that. So let me close that bottom window there. And let me get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this reassignment. And let's create another method. So I'm going to say public static. And we will be covering the use of the static word shortly in another lesson. And I'm going to say get int. So I'm declaring another method. And here I'm going to declare another variable within that method. I'm going to call this method scope equals, say 22 on that. And here I want to return that variable. So this method getInt is going to return back an integer, and it's going to return back that variable method scope. And here, if I say int my var equals, so on line 9 there, what I'm doing is saying that my variable equals the value from the getInt method. So if I come up here and I'm going to change our output to use the myvar, and now when I run this, we can see that the output is 22. So let me resize this a little bit. Now what I cannot do here is I cannot say this equals method, because what's happening here, put an equal sign there. What's happening here is on line 9, I'm declaring my var method scope. That method scope variable only exists in the context of this method. So I can't get to it outside of that method. So here, if I try to run this, the compiler would throw an error, and it's not going to be happy about that at all if I try to run that. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm just going to delete that altogether. Now, one last thing that we want to talk about is member variables. So I can come up here and say static int, and this is a member variable. Remember that is a favorite interview question. I'm going to say member var equals 1, 2, 3. Now I can use that in my method because that variable belongs to the scope of the entire class. So any method in the class can access that member variable. That's why they call it a member variable. So now if I run this, we'll see that the output changes to 1, 2, 3. So that's very important. And also from that, I can also say int my inner var equals member var. Actually, let's say member var plus 10. And now if I do the output of my inner variable, and I run this, you can see that I get 133. So what's happening here is when I declare this variable inner var, I'm saying that it equals member var plus 10. So you can see down in the bottom window, I get 133 outputted. So that there's a number of different ways that we can declare variables and also manage those variables. And you can see that we can change those values when we need to, when we're running within our code. And we can also prevent changes to those variables using the final keyword. And we've shown you a lot here in this video, and we will definitely be working with variables a lot more coming up in the course.